Hey everyone, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 33 for January 20th, 2017. Howdy folks, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for yet another episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week we'll be talking about Windows 10, the Insider build, the latest one that came out this week, as well as a bunch of other things, including Zach's new Surface keyboard that he got, and probably one of the bigger stories that'll be coming out in 2017, composable shells, or CShells for short, which lends itself to some fun iterations. We'll also talk about the Cube WP10, which is a tablet thing, I believe, that Zach has been reviewing, and I'll share my thoughts on the Razer Blade Pro, also known as a $4,500 laptop. So there you go. How are you doing this week, Zach?
I'm not too bad. I also just realized there was another story this week. Foldable Surface phone patents that we should probably talk about as well. That's quite a big one that we didn't include in the list. So we'll talk about that at some point on the episode as well. But apart from that, I'm okay. How are you?
You know, it's an interesting day in the United States this Friday. So
yeah. How's that going?
Yeah, well, it'll be an interesting 4 years. But let's focus on something happy. So
yes.
Let's talk about that latest Insider build, 15014. Am I saying that right?
15,014, some might say, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, a new build, as per most weeks now, for PC and mobile, which is nice on the mobile side. Although mobile, seeing less big features, more optimization, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing by any means. But I mean, a lot of Windows Phone or Windows 10 mobile fans are a little bit annoyed right now. We'll get to that in a minute. But for PC, quite a few notable changes. First and foremost, personalization options. Microsoft is now basically allowing you to choose any color on the color spectrum that you like by detailed configurability within the personalization panel. You can choose like a color picker that you can just slide it along and choose literally any color you want, and the title bars and the taskbar and your color accent will change accordingly. Very nice indeed. That's something insiders have been asking for a long time. Still no way to enable an actual pure black taskbar, which is something that I wish was a thing, but it isn't yet. Hopefully that comes in a future update. Also, Bookstore. Microsoft is jumping into ebooks all of a sudden with the Windows Store. So now, if you jump into the Windows Store, there'll be a new Books tab, and in there you'll be able to buy books and read them within Microsoft Edge. So Microsoft doesn't appear to be building a dedicated reader app. Instead, they're just going to say, hey, Microsoft Edge supports it. You click on a book, it opens it in Edge, and you can read it from there. The experience should be fine, I guess.
I actually bought a book, so I can actually share with you my experience.
Crazy. Yeah, go ahead. Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty decent. So I mean, I'm actually really kind of impressed with it because out the gate, it's a pretty robust system. Now, the biggest competitor here in this business, of course, is Amazon and their Kindle, and so that's like Microsoft and Groove taking on iTunes. It's not insignificant to challenge Amazon. Having said that, so the selection is not nearly as comprehensive as what Amazon has, and that'd be ludicrous to expect that out the gate. But they do have a pretty good selection. They have I like their categories that they have. The pricing is on par with Amazon for most books that I found. And what happens is, you buy it, and then it opens up in Edge, which is a little weird. And it syncs between your devices, and you can jump through table of contents, and it's in color, obviously. If the book supports graphic images, you can have those in there as well. It's pretty nice. Now, I think the tough sell for people, and people are divided on this, is whether or not you like to read books on a computer screen or an actual phone versus someone like me who likes the Kindle with the Paperwhite. Also known as e-ink. And so Microsoft doesn't have a solution for that. That's probably the one downside where Amazon will still have an edge. But overall, the system is pretty cool. I thought it was going to support, when we talked about Edge and EPUB and all that and ebooks, I thought it was independent books, just as sort of an e-reader with, no decryption. I didn't realize there was a whole tie-in with the store and book selection. You can buy stuff. I didn't realize all that was coming with it. And I thought that, out the gate, it's a pretty nice system. I'm actually kind of intrigued by it.
Does it have most of the main books in there? I guess I'm not really a book reader, so I wouldn't know what a main book counts as. But you know how on iOS and Android, you get the main apps.
I think what they went for is they went for the classics. Your ironically, George Orwell, 1984, maybe your Aldous Huxley. And then they also have books that came out within the last 2 years. I mean, it goes back further than that, of course, but like the big books that have come out within the last few years. And they have like stuff on Neil Gaiman and stuff like that. So it does have like everything that's sort of on the bestseller list. They seem to have,
Right. That's good.
Yeah, the things that most people would go for right away. A lot of Philip K. Dick. So they have like a cool sci-fi section, which is really good with a lot of legendary writers there. So not as comprehensive as Amazon, but I immediately found myself kind of preferring it to Amazon, and I think people will understand why that would be, because Amazon's kind of gotten rid of their Amazon Reader for Windows 10 Mobile, and I don't even know if it's on PC anymore. So I think, that's right, they have their Win32 app, which is, whatever.
I think the thing for us is that we just prefer anything natively built into Windows 10, such as we prefer the Windows Store over Steam.
Right.
We prefer Windows Store books over Amazon books.
Yep. And
so yeah, I mean, if you're all in on the Microsoft ecosystem, it does make sense to have one of these. I know a lot of people on Twitter were like, Microsoft are really quite late to the ebook market. I feel like Amazon has beat. It's not about winning in that case. It's just a store for people to buy things on. If you're a publisher and you want to get your book to as many people as possible, it's not like building an app for a platform. You write one book and you can just submit it everywhere. It's a different kind of platform compared to apps.
Yeah, it's like I said, they have a tough sell with this. I think Amazon has a lot of convenience. One reason I like Amazon is because when you look at a book, or if you bought a book, it gives you really good recommendations based on that topic and style and all that. And I tend to, and it's not that I like that, I find it to be accurate, which is the important thing. And that's where all these algorithms come into play, and, Amazon collecting data on you and stuff. But for me, it actually kind of works. A lot of times when I do read a book on Amazon and I see another recommendation, I'm like, oh, I would like to read that. So that and user reviews, of course, are sort of like, for me, the thing that's going to be a little bit difficult to compete with. But the convenience factor is huge. This is where I actually do consider myself to be a normal human. And I step away from the tech writer status, where I just like convenience. Like, for me, it's just easier to be in a system already and just like click and buy instead of downloading someone else's app and installing it and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's how most people operate. And that's where I think the PC gaming stuff with the store is going to be potentially huge, because yeah, there are the people who install Steam. I also know a lot of people who don't know what the hell Steam is, but who like to play video games. So it's sort of like you got to go after those people too.
Yeah, the trend of Windows 10 right now is very convenience over configurability and whatnot, which is I think is a good thing, especially for the more general audience. Of course, it is Windows after all.
Although speaking of configurability, that ability to select your accent color, which is not on mobile for some reason, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, and the same blue light's still missing from mobile. I really honestly think it's not coming in mobile. Honestly, I'll be so upset if it doesn't show up at some point.
So this gets into, and we'll talk about this a little bit after, I guess, with the future of mobile and everything like that. And we've talked about this in the past, where I think the blue light thing is going to be contingent also upon the hardware, which just means that companies would need to build products that would support that feature, just like how some laptops or some display monitors, you can't control the brightness through the operating system, where others you can. That's just an optional configuration. So, Apple can do this with the iPhone because they build the hardware in the OS, so it obviously all works together. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I wish, this is an area where I wish Microsoft would be kind of, forthright with us and just be like, yeah, that blue light feature, here it is on PC on the Insider build. You can try it out. For those on mobile, unfortunately, due to hardware restrictions, we can't enable this feature, but we, would like to bring it to future devices. Just say that, just so then, we have to keep guessing, because right now we have no idea. Is it coming? I don't know.
See, this is one of my issues with the Insider program. Is that they don't communicate very well. There will be. When insiders start testing a new build from a new development branch, Microsoft don't detail what this update will eventually have altogether and when it's coming and what it would be cool. They just say, here's a new build. We're working on the next major update of Windows. They don't give any roadmap. They have a roadmap website and it hasn't been updated since 2015 maybe. It's been a while since it's been updated. It definitely hasn't been updated for Redstone 2. So it just, they can't commit, and rightly so, because actually this is kind of relevant. Microsoft did announce that My People, the feature that was supposed to arrive with the Creators Update, has been delayed and been cut from the Creators Update. Now we've said this,
which answers our question from a few weeks ago,
right,
about whether or not we're going to start to see some major features.
Apparently not. Right. I mean, like, again, we've mentioned this plenty of times on the podcast. Microsoft do cancel things internally all the time. It's just unfortunate when they've announced it publicly and then they end up going, well, actually, we can't deliver on this. Oops. It doesn't look good. I mean, you don't really see Apple doing things like that, do you? Where they're like, all right, here's the new Mac OS. And then when the release comes up, well, actually, this, and this that we announced, we can't bring it in time. They don't really do that. It's a little bit sloppy on Microsoft's behalf. But then again, this is the nature of development, and I'm kind of gutted that the My People stuff isn't going to show up now, because I was looking forward to that the most. I'm not really a big fan of Paint 3D and whatever else.
And this gets, I guess this is the complicated part of their job, which is like they would like to be like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what's coming. And then, even with the My People thing, right? So they announced that like in October, and it's like, okay, they thought at that point that they were able to deliver it, and then something changed where, it's... And so if they announce more features, it's like they don't know if they can deliver on that. So they're in a rock and a hard place a little bit, but at least on features, back to the blue light thing, obviously that's announced. It's here on PC. Is it coming to mobile? Just, let us know.
Yeah, a couple more noteworthy changes on PC. The Cortana search box is now a much brighter color. It's a little bit more lighter than it was before. It doesn't look great. I don't think it kind of looks out of place, especially if you're using the default dark taskbar, because obviously a light search box on a dark taskbar kind of stands out a little bit more than it should, whereas before it was a grey colour, which kind of blended nicely. Makes me think that Microsoft will be introducing a light theme with Redstone 2, because Microsoft has had a light theme in the plans for years at this point for Windows 10. And it hasn't shown up yet. They've obviously added it in with apps, but it hasn't ever affected the start menu and taskbar and action sensor. It looks like, given that now the white Cortana bar is in, that they'll also be adding a light mode to the taskbar and the start menu. Because it would just make more sense if you look at the screenshot Microsoft provided of the new search box. If you just picture the taskbar being a much lighter color, it makes sense for that to be there. I don't think Microsoft will keep this on for dark mode. I think it looks out of place. But yeah, that's another change that they're experimenting with. Not only that, they're also experimenting with a new battery performer, a battery slider thing. So
I like this.
Windows, yeah. So Windows 10, Windows for a long time now has had options in Control Panel to adjust the power mode of your laptop or desktop, mostly battery-powered machines actually. So now they're adding that to the system tray. When you click on the battery icon, you'll be able to just easily slide between recommended power mode or more performance, so you can give your laptop or whatnot a little bit of a boost when needed. Obviously, more performance means less battery life, whereas you can save battery life by lowering performance and whatnot. Very nice, a lot more consumer-friendly, I guess, whereas the current implemented experience is...
Yeah, I use this feature a lot, or I should say I would like to use this feature a lot. I'm very well aware if you double-click the battery, then you go to more power options and all that, you can select usually balance performance. It also depends upon... what the manufacturer has like allowed, and sometimes they even make their own power plans. And so, but it was never convenient to use. Like it was buried in order to, so it was just not something you changed very often. But on something like my Razer Blade 14-inch, or even a Razer Blade Pro, which we'll talk about later, being able to switch between those modes is super important because, like a Razer Blade's a quad core 1060 and all this. Okay, but if I'm like, browsing the web or in Word, I don't need performance at that point. I could definitely tone that down quite a bit. So having that slider feature, I think just it looks great and it's super convenient to use, and it would really, I think, improve usability for that. So
yeah, Microsoft has also pinned the Mail app to the taskbar by default in this build, so that's a huge change that I'm pretty sure deserves headlines on its own. And finally, one of the last noteworthy change is the storage sense. So Microsoft is now adding an automatic freeing up space feature on the Windows 10 PC. So currently, Windows has a thing called temporary files, also has a recycling bin. And now there's an option that if you turn on after, say, 30 days or so, Windows will check these areas, and if there's any files in there that shouldn't be there, will delete them. So keeping this would be mostly beneficial on devices with small hard drives or SSDs, like 32 gigs or 64 gigs. So then every month or so, Windows will just make sure that you have the most space you possibly have on your device. Because Windows is quite a big operating system. It's about 10 gigabytes, I think, installed clean. So when you factor that in on top of a lot of trialware that OEMs like to bundle on these low-end, small hard drive devices, this device will come in handy, I think. This option will come in handy. So very excited to see that. But apart from that, that's pretty much all the most noteworthy changes on desktop. On mobile, Microsoft re-added an animation that makes Windows Hello slower. I know not many people are noticing it. I notice it, and it makes me sad. And performance improvements. Everybody has said Windows 10 Mobile it seems a lot more snappy with this latest build, and I agree. It does. It's definitely it's feeling a lot smoother now, which is very nice. I mean, it has only taken them 2 years almost, but it's getting there.
Yeah, the performance felt good to me. It's still a bit buggy. I had an issue last night where my Surface Book, where I'm running it, where I opened it, resumed from sleep, still had some problems where I would click and nothing was responding. So there are definitely some quirks. If you're thinking about installing this on your main machine, because there will always, as this always happens, be a point where you approach its release of this build to the public where people are going to start to wonder if they should jump in. I would say we're not there yet. So if you're looking at these features and envious to think about if you should install this on your main PC or even your mobile device, I would still hold off. I do not personally use this as my daily driver. It still has some quirks to it, but we're expecting this to be released in mid-April. So we still have quite a bit of time left, February through March. It's going to be a lot of tidying up. And one thing we've seen in the past with these insider updates is they really do tidy up towards the end. Like, it's pretty amazing. Like, in performance-wise, it feels really good right now. So I think, and that's great. I mean, Edge feels way faster, and there's some really cool new options in About Flags, which if you don't know, if you go to your address bar, type About :flags, it gives you basically hidden options. It works almost in any browser. But in Edge, they added a few of the new things there, like this fetch capability. And you can kind of toy around. Just be careful because you can also screw up things. But Edge feels really, really good for performance, and the OS feels incredibly fast. Whether it's like bringing up Cortana, the Action Center, the animations, it just all feels very fluid. And that's going to improve and get better and more reliable, of course, over the next few weeks. And so I would still hold off if you're thinking about doing this. This is still your secondary machine type scenario, in my opinion, or VMware.
Now that My People has been cut from the Creators Update, we're far closer to the Creators Update being feature complete than we were prior to it being cut. So I don't think we're expecting any more big features to be implemented at this point. From now on, it'll be little tweaks and little things here and there and whatnot. And then Microsoft will internally say, right, we're done adding things. Now it's just fix. And that usually takes around a month, maybe a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, the longer they take to fix bugs and whatnot, the smoother and a more stable final release is put out in April. So next few weeks, I guess Microsoft will internally say, right, we're done adding features, and then it's just bug fixes from there on. So if you're expecting any huge new things, for desktop at least, I wouldn't be hoping for such. But on mobile, it could be a different story. Speaking of mobile, Surface Phone patents.
So this is an interesting story, and we talk about toning down, there are a lot of patents that get filed by Microsoft and every tech company for that matter, and not all of those turn into products. They are basically designed to protect research they've done, ideas that they think are neat and that they may use someday. Because the intellectual property system in the US and that's recognized around the world is kind of strange, where like you can basically come up with an idea and patent it and just sit on it. And then if someone else comes up with the idea and then tries to sell it, you can just be like, we've had that for years and give us money. And it's a little bit weird. And so when these patent images came out, there's a temptation to just be like, well, that's cool. But we've seen some really wacky stuff from Microsoft in the past through patents. And, what makes this different? So first of all, the devices, there was two of them at least described, right? There was one with two screens that folded like a sandwich, and then there was one with three screens, which is hilarious because I was just talking about a couple of weeks ago how in Westworld they have a device that to me seemed like exactly what a future Surface thing would look like, a Surface Mobile, where it lays down flat. It's a giant touch screen. You can use it with the OS, and then it like it's a three-fold thing where it folds in on itself, and then they use it as a cell phone. And they actually do put it in their pocket. It's big, but it's pocketable. And then sure enough, this thing comes out, and it's exactly what it looks like. And it's just a little bit strange to sort of see that. Now, Zach, you and I have both talked to people who we can't say this is definitely a thing that's coming out, but this is something where our sources they thought it was super interesting. Well, let's put it that way. Am I wording that correctly?
Right, yeah. Some of the people I spoke to were like, so there it is. Like, you know what I mean? They're not saying, oh, this is a thing that we're working on. It's like, oh, yeah, like they all recognized it, which was kind of suspicious.
And that was the same reaction we had where the Surface Studio patents came out. So if you can go back and there was a patent for the Surface Studio, and it looks exactly like what I'm using right now on my desk. There were some differences. For instance, that patent had a modular PC concept where you'd stack components within. This definitely does not have that. But still, if you look at the overall design and the hinges and everything like that, it is exactly what the Surface Studio is. When that story came out and we talked to our sources, they were like, same reaction that we're getting now with this device. And I don't think we've talked about whatever Surface phone is going to be, a Surface Mobile will be in the future. Like, it's going to focus on pen, on inking, it's going to be a big screen. Like this fits the hallmark of what the Surface brand is. It's different. It's a new category of device. You can call it a phone, but it's also not a phone. I've always raised this idea of like, we don't really use these devices anymore as cell phones. I mean, we do. Of course, they make calls, but their primary use now is computing. And so if you could redo a smartphone today in 2017, knowing how people are using these devices, what would that look like? Would it still just be a candy bar phone with a horizontal screen, or a vertical screen rather? Or would it be something different? And I think this device fits all that. So it's going to be real interesting to see if this come the fall, and we're still kind of hearing, reports of the fall for something along these lines, or 2017. So I don't know.
I mean, Surface Phone as a concept that we're talking about, like from the Westworld sort of thing, it's a great idea, except the current software that Windows 10 has wouldn't work with it, because although Windows 10 is technically a universal platform, it's not universal everywhere. And this week I read a story that Microsoft is building a new shell, a universal shell that will be able to scale across phones, PCs, tablets, laptops, and even Xbox. So it goes from the very smallest end of the spectrum all the way up to the biggest TVs you can possibly think of. And currently that's not possible. So if you think of the Surface Phone, for example, if it was to fold out, it wouldn't be able to expand into, say, a desktop mode or a tablet mode, because obviously the shell doesn't do that. Windows 10 Mobile or a mobile shell.
Well, it does through Continuum.
Continuum it does, but that's not a kind of real time experience. It has to switch from mobile to desktop, whereas what Microsoft is building, called composable shell internally, would allow it to just fold out and go straight out. There's the now desktop or tablet experience. Now, this doesn't sound all that new if you're looking at it from a mobile perspective, because you're right, Windows 10 Mobile has a continuum mode, which basically says, here's the phone UI, and now here's a desktop mode. But CShell is big news for desktop, because it's doing that but backwards. Desktop currently doesn't have a Windows 10 Mobile UI. It has a desktop mode and a tablet mode. If you put Windows 10 on a 7-inch or 6-inch device, it is not optimized very well. Things look either squashed or very small to tap on and whatnot. It's not an optimized operating system for small devices at all. But with CShell, Windows would be able to say, oh, I'm full Windows 10. I'm running on a 6-inch device. Here's a Windows 10 Mobile UI that makes sense at this screen size. Or if you put Windows 10 on a streaming stick, for example, and you plug it into a TV, Windows 10 goes, oh, I'm now a sort of media streaming device. I can now show the Xbox UI or something or other that makes sense with a remote. that all using the same kind of Windows 10. And this is mostly beneficial for phones running Windows 10 on ARM, which Microsoft hasn't actually said that they're going to be building phones with Windows 10 on ARM. They've just said devices. They've not been specific that phones will be coming.
Right.
But with a composable shell, CShells for short, this makes sense. And a Surface phone running full Windows 10 on ARM with a C shell means it can be a phone when it needs to be. Well, then you fold it out, it can be a tablet or a desktop when it needs to be also.
Yeah, and so I guess there are two components you would need for Windows 10 on ARM to, also mimic being a cell phone or a smartphone, as you call them today. One, you need the telephony stack, the ability to make phone calls, the dialer, all that. That's not part of Windows 10 right now. That is still part of Windows 10 Mobile proper. There's no reason to think that couldn't be brought over. In fact, I think we're seeing parts of it brought over with the eSIM technology that's going to be part of Windows 10 on ARM. We talked about this in the past. eSIM is basically replacing physical SIMs, and it's just... But you type in a number and you can buy it through the store and stuff like that, and it'll just activate your data connection. And so with eSIM, that obviously gets you partly there. You're going to get the data connection part. You still need the phone voice stuff though. So there's that, and then there's the UI thing, right? And that's where this composable shell stuff definitely becomes interesting. I think it's also kind of interesting, and you show this in your video with the Windows 10 walkthrough build for the latest one, where your start screen, first of all, they got rid of the app column, or they made it optional to display, and which I really enjoy that they got rid of that or allow you to hide it now. Instead, it's just the start screen with the tiles. You can have that. And then you can even have it as like only two columns. And the way it looks just like the phone. And if you think about this thing kind of collapsing in on itself, they're already kind of doing the groundwork of that start menu to make it look like mobile. And I don't think that's coincidence. I think that's, part of this whole movement to make the shell, universal across all devices.
And I think it's worth noting as well, C Shell will be coming to Windows 10 Mobile. Microsoft has actually kind of demoed C Shell in its infancy already. Back at Ignite last year, they demoed Windows 10 Mobile's upcoming continuum improvements with an actual taskbar with windowed apps and an action center that makes sense. Basically, what they're doing is they're bringing the actual Windows 10 desktop to Windows 10 Mobile continuum. And if you think about it, that's C Shell. That's the end goal for C Shell. It can scale from this UI to that UI, and then obviously backwards through full Windows 10 to the phone UI. So we've heard it's coming to mobile first. I cannot confirm if that means Redstone 2 or Redstone 3 and then desktop later. Some sources have said it's closer to being ready than you would think for mobile. So that doesn't really give us a time zone. But I'm definitely hearing this year for C Shell on mobile. So you'll definitely get the Windows 10 Mobile Continuum there, and then obviously the full desktop experience elsewhere. But then for desktop, it'll be coming later, and then Xbox will be even later than that. So it's a slow burner. In this case, it'll be here it is, the kind of Windows 10 Mobile. So it's a sort of test platform because nobody uses Windows 10 Mobile. Let's be honest, they can mess about with that and not have huge backlash.
Right.
Then obviously when it's much more optimized and the desktop going backwards is ready, then they'll bring it to desktop. Maybe with Redstone 3, maybe with Redstone 4. Then further down the line, it'll be an Xbox thing as well. So it's a long project, but one that will definitely make Windows 10 practically universal. At some point, an OEM could see Windows 10 on ARM and just say, right, so we're building a phone, right? Let's just put Windows 10 on it, because there won't be a difference between Windows 10, apart from obviously Windows 10 Mobile being more lightweight and other things. But full Windows 10 and ARM with 32 support could, in theory, run on a phone thanks to C Shell.
And we've got the app thing with UWPs. I would say partially solved. That too is a project in the work. So yeah, you can run apps now on your PC and on your phone, and even now on Xbox. But it's still rough around the edges. The APIs aren't completed yet. There's still what we're seeing with Project Neon. There's going to be, and it's interesting to talk about Neon, how that relates to composable shells. Because that's you have the shell itself, but then you have the UI. And Neon is also about trying to bridge the UI across all these devices too. Basically taking the desktop and allowing it to live in a sort of a holographic environment. So they got a lot of things that they're working on. And this addresses, I think, the biggest issue, which is, what people have always talked about, which is people would be like, why don't just put, Windows on a phone, But then you can't, because you can't have a tiny start menu and the desktop and all that. It just doesn't work on that device. So what they're doing now is making an operating system that at its core, it's the same across all devices. And then now on the other end, the shell, and then with Project Neon and UWP, what the user sees, it adjusts to that display. And so these issues of touch versus mouse versus a controller become a little bit easier to manage based on the device you're using. Because right now it's kind of the problem. It's like, and we saw this with Windows 8 too, with, all right, you make everything touch friendly, but then how do you do the mouse stuff? And they had hidden gestures, and that didn't work well. I mean, they worked well, but discoverability was difficult. So there's like a lot of usability things that need to be considered here that I think they're trying to solve. But yeah, it's not something you just do overnight.
I mean, yeah, it's basically a modularized shell. It's Windows can say, right, so this device I'm running on right now needs this, and this for the best optimal experience. So pull those from the shell, make it display to the user, perfect experience. And it scales somewhere else and goes, right, now we're on a bigger screen, so I need this, and this from the shell. This, and this can go away, doesn't need to be seen. Now the experience is much better here as well. It's basically that. It's a fast-working shell that just knows what experience to give to the user depending on the screen size, the power, the performance of it, and other things. It's a very exciting concept, and one that I cannot wait to see come to life across all of the devices. Again, like we said, it should come to mobile first, then desktop, and then later Xbox. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Hopefully, we'll see. Maybe more at Build.
The question I've been getting though with this is, what does that mean for Windows 10 and Windows 10 Mobile as two separate products, I guess? And not much right now. It doesn't mean much because Windows 10 is still Windows 10 after all, and Windows 10 Mobile is still Windows 10 Mobile. They are different operating systems, but the end goal is to have them be the same. I don't see Windows 10 Mobile going away once Windows 10 on ARM can scale to phones. As Dan has said many times, it could just eventually be used as a lightweight version of Windows 10, or in other words, Windows RT, which was a thing before where it could just run modern apps and whatnot. Windows 10 Mobile, I can see turning into that option for OEMs to build like really lightweight laptops that just have low specs but can run well because it's Windows 10 Mobile. Again, it will still have CShells, so it'll still be able to switch between a mobile UI and a desktop UI depending on the device. I guess this also means OEMs will be able to build a laptop and just have Windows 10 Mobile on it. Although I don't see why they would. It's a possibility with C Shell and whatnot. So
I still think this distinction between Windows 10 Mobile and Windows 10 is just going to go away. Right. I think this is just going to be Windows at some point.
It'll end up just being a different version of Windows 10. Like, you know how you've got currently Windows 10 Home, Windows 10 Pro, Windows 10 Enterprise. Right. It'll eventually be Windows 10 Lite, which would be Windows 10 Mobile, Windows 10 Home, which is currently Windows 10 on ARM, which would, I guess, be called something much more consumer-friendly by the time it comes out, and so on and so forth. So it's eventually it ends up just being one universal operating system that just has different features. Of course, IoT won't be full Windows 10. IoT will still be a subset of Windows 10 stuff that makes sense for an IoT device. Same for server. You won't see server stuff showing up in client.
Yeah, because I mean, an important point you had to remember is that you may not. I mean, Windows 10 IoT is a perfect example. Like, why it's IoT is because IoT devices don't need UIs and shells necessarily, and you want to strip out as much as possible so you can fit that onto a tiny device. I mean, this was the issue supposedly with, the Microsoft Band, and that Windows 10 IoT was still just too much for it. And so their goal is to reduce, you cut out what you can for that device category needed. And so even when it comes to mobile, you don't want to have like full necessarily desktop Win32 on a mobile device so you can run Photoshop on a 6-inch display, so like you want to cut it out as much as you can too. So it's definitely interesting. I wish we could see sort of what their master plan is here for SKUs and versions, and what their actual end goal is. Like, do they just want one OS? Xbox, I think, is a really good example because like Xbox has right now 3 operating systems that run in tandem. It's a pretty insane system. And what they're doing a lot of work on is the Windows 10 part right now with universal Windows apps. And we know very soon we're going to start to see some more changes coming to Windows on Xbox, specifically some of the menus and how things are operating. And I'd say stay tuned, very soon for that info. These aren't dramatic changes, though. These are just going to be some smaller ones. And so and we know for Scorpio they're going to have to change it again. So there's still, even on the Xbox front, there's still a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, rebuilding a shell or adding to the shell is a long process. It's basically for those of you who don't know what the shell is, we should have clarified that first. It's basically how you know Windows. It's the taskbar, it's the desktop, it's the start menu, it's where your windows live when you have multiple windows open. It's basically how people use Windows, and the shell has come far ever since Windows conception and whatnot. So it is pretty exciting to see Microsoft finally bringing that to the universal platform as well, because although they've done well in making Windows Phone look like Windows 10 PC in some areas, the actual shells aren't universal yet. The shell is universal between tablet mode and desktop mode on PC, which is obvious because it's pretty much an instant switch, but it's not universal across PC, mobile, and and Xbox yet. But it will be, which is very fun.
There you go. So, all right, what do you want to talk about next? You want to do your Cube?
I'll quickly mention my Cube because I've been reviewing that thing for a little while now, and I can say don't buy it.
Thanks.
It's not a thing.
6 weeks later, don't buy this. It's terrible.
Don't buy it. It's riddled with issues. First and foremost, Windows 10 Mobile at a 7 inches, which is technically tablet size, so I expect Windows 10 Mobile to be able to scale to that. And it can, but on the Cube WB10, it doesn't. It appears Cube has done zero optimization to the ROM that Windows 10 Mobile runs on the Cube WB10. So OEMs, you can usually customize their installs of an operating system when they're building hardware. So HP, for example, say, I want the scaling to be this much. I want these apps to be pinned to the start screen by default. I want these apps to be installed by default, and so on and so forth. Cube have done nothing. They've basically left everything at their default settings, so Windows 10 Mobile has no idea what to do. So it just scales itself as if it was running on a 4-inch device. So you get the big tiles, all the icons look huge, and it's generally an unhappy experience on tablet mode. You can change the display slider slightly, but it doesn't improve it much. All apps still run as if they were running on a phone. And as you can imagine, on 7 inches, that's just not worth it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense at that point. So that's a bad one. Not only that, the LCD, the screen itself, Windows 10 Mobile sits slightly below where it's supposed to be. So when you tap on the screen, the actual touch input is slightly below your finger. And there's a stupid, a noticeable black bar at the top, and the bottom of the display is cut off. It's not great. It's very clunky, and I can't fix it. I don't know how to fix it. Good stuff. The build is very nice. I definitely enjoy holding it. It doesn't feel plastic or cheap or anything. It actually feels kind of like a $400 mini tablet rather than a $120 mini tablet. So I'm quite pleased with the build, but I'm just upset that Cube didn't put much effort into making the software better. And Windows 10 Mobile can perform well on the 7-inch tablet, because I was able to interrupt, unlock the device, go into the registry, tweak a few things, install a few things. Oh, that's the other thing as well. It has no update support, either officially or via the Insider program. So the build you buy it on is the build it's stuck on. You don't get any other updates outside of 10.586, which is a huge problem. So you don't get Skype Preview or any apps from the Windows Store that target the anniversary update or above. So what I did is that I forced the anniversary update onto it. I interrupt unlocked it. I went into the registry. I tweaked a few things, and I was able to get it scaling correctly as well. I couldn't fix the weird issue with the LCD, but I was able to make the UI actually scale as if it was on a 7-inch device. And after doing that, the device became a lot more usable, and I actually eventually enjoyed using it. I was, obviously, as you do with a tablet, you kind of use it in bed at night time to browse the web and whatnot. I really enjoyed it because apps would scale properly. Like Twitter would show up with the buttons on the left-hand side as it should do on a tablet. Edge displayed websites correctly. It really did feel like a mini Windows 10 Mobile tablet. And it's upsetting because it doesn't look like any other OEMs care about Windows 10 Mobile on tablets. Windows 10 Full is, of course, the thing that OEMs are using to build Windows 10 tablets right now. But the Windows 10 tablet experience on desktop isn't great at smaller sizes. So 7-inch, 8-inch, 9-inch, it could be better. And Windows 10 Mobile is just such a lightweight operating system. It just makes sense on low-end tablets because it just flies. I could switch between all of my universal apps quite quickly and easily, go to start, open a new app. It'd all run fine. But on Windows 10 Full tablets, you just know on a low-end CPU, that's just not something you can do as quickly. It takes a minute to do this and this and this. You can switch between, then you open a new app, and that has to take a second to load and whatnot. It's just not a as nice of an experience as it is on Windows 10 Mobile. But of course, since Cube have done the optimization out of the box, I can't recommend people buy it based on the fact that if you did buy it, you'd have to do a lot of like tweaking and interop, basically hacking to get it working. Yes, it did, Dan.
Oh, but I think it's back.
It is back. So yeah, overall, I can't recommend it. If another OEM comes out with Windows 10 Mobile tablet, I will be buying it because I would like to see an OEM build an actual Windows 10 Mobile tablet that is in support and that does scale correctly, that is supported by the OEM. But the Cube is basically just one of those off-the-shelf sort of things that you buy once and use as is, and it's not great.
See, I think my video froze because I'm using a Surface Studio.
Yeah, it's frozen a couple times throughout the show.
No, it's not Skype. It's a $4,200 PC that has crappy storage. I bet when I do upgrade it to the 960 Pro, which I have here, but I haven't got around to doing that project, it'll be better. But this is an issue with a stupid physical hard disk in 2017. That's 5,400 RPM. It's garbage. Why would you put that into a computer? I don't know, but there you go. So, all right, don't buy the Cube. Let's talk about another real computer, though, that I actually really enjoy, the Razer Blade Pro. So speaking of expensive, this starts, I believe, at around $4,000, maybe a little bit less, and goes up to $4,500. It's an insane piece of hardware. It has a full desktop Core i7 processor, has a NVIDIA GTX 1080 graphics video card. The one I'm testing has 2 terabytes of SSD that is in a RAID 0 configuration, which is gave me some outstanding benchmarks, easily the fastest read and write times I've ever seen on any computer. And it's just, and 32 gigs of RAM because it's a laptop and you totally need that, but why not? And this all powers a 4K Ixio display that's IPS. That's basically, it's similar to the display in the XPS 15, just at 17.3 inches. And it is just, wow, what a machine. And you'll see the video review for that should, probably going up today on Friday, but the actual written review will probably go up Monday or Tuesday. And why are people, I hate Instagram. I don't care when people are streaming. But anyway, so it is a beautiful laptop. I mean, the hardware-wise, it's just immaculate. It's funny, too, because it's literally a 14-inch Razer blade, just big, And it's just under 8 pounds, which sounds heavy, but if you've ever used a 17-inch laptop, it's actually not heavy. It's actually thin and light for a 17-inch laptop, especially with one with full desktop components in it. It has a 99 watt-hour battery. They couldn't go any bigger because you wouldn't be able to bring this on an airplane. The FCC only, FCC? No, I forget who controls it, but you can't bring anything 100 watt hours on a plane due to safety concerns. It's a really, really good device, and you'd hope with that kind of money you would get that, but that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. My issue I have, which is not really a huge issue, is the keyboard. It's a very unique keyboard. It's a low-profile mechanical keyboard, and I'm not part of the mechanical keyboard people out there. Like, there are a group of people, obviously gamers, usually, who just love the precision and the clickiness of mechanical keyboards. And this speaks to them. It's not a bad keyboard. It's just different. And if you use it as your primary device or most of the time, you get used to it. And the reason I'm not more critical of it is because I can type on it. Like, I can type fast on it. Like, I'm very quick and I have no issues. I'm not making mistakes. So I can't say it's a bad keyboard. It just feels weird. I kind of wish they took the same keyboard from the Razer Blade 14 and just put it into this one. I would have been totally fine with that. Interestingly, the trackpad is a very good trackpad, and they use precision this time, which is weird for them. In the past, Razer hasn't used precision trackpads in their devices. This one, you can press it down and click, which Razer Blade 14 doesn't do. You just have to tap, but it doesn't actually click. It's just a really nice trackpad. It's a little bit narrow, and then part of this is because they decided to put the trackpad adjacent to the keyboard as opposed to below it, like on traditional laptops. That too, a little bit weird. You get used to it very quickly and it actually feels pretty natural. You think about it, it's just like being at a keyboard with a mouse. The downside is, of course, if you're left-handed, you're kind of screwed. I don't know what you do in that case. Um, but I really liked this device. It's just, it's fun to use. Even battery life isn't that bad. You're talking like 3.5 hours, maybe 4 if you turn things down, just using it as a computer, right? Windows 10 stuff. If you want to use it for gaming, obviously you probably get like 90 minutes. But this isn't really meant to be gained mobile. I mean, at least not on your lap, like in a car or something like that. It's a big device at 17 inches, obviously. But man, I've been playing Gears of War on it with my friends and doing horde mode. And, it's crazy playing, gaming at like 4K, where you can turn the resolution down slightly below 4K and still get 60 frames per second with everything set on ultra. Like, to have that in a laptop is insane. And yeah, the fans get a little loud. You want to use headphones when gaming, of course, unless you want to hear a little vacuum. But what's cool, as soon as you stop the game, just like on the Razer Blade 14, I said, the fans immediately ramp down. They don't stay on for like 5 minutes to cool the system. So I think they did a really beautiful job with this. And I think it's awesome that Razer created this device for people who have money. If you don't have $4,000 to buy a laptop, that's fine. There are plenty of laptops that are not $4,000 that have similar specs and even better specs, right? There are gaming laptops you can get dual 1080s in them. It's going to be 12 pounds and it's going to be like 4 inches thick, but it's a different kind of device for people. So I don't know. Kudos to Razer for doing that.
I mean, it's great to see all kinds of OEMs kind of pushing the boat out a bit, even for because a while ago now, every hardware maker was basically just building devices that catered to the mainstream market, and nobody was branching out and trying new things. But now they are. Razer's doing these crazy things with obviously their Razer Blade Pro and their 3-screened laptop thing, which was pretty cool. And loads of OEMs are just trying new things now, which is very exciting indeed. I definitely think it's needed because it's been a while since we had a big, innovative sort of technology device that went mainstream and changed how we use things. The last thing that pretty much did that was the iPhone, I'd say, or the iPad. So
yeah, and the CEO of Razer, who's on Twitter, he basically said, like, we don't build devices to compete with other companies. He's like, we just build what we think is going to be the best gaming device we can. And that's a cool, approach, right? If you're always trying to compete with people and outdo them, it doesn't allow you to try those new kind of things. And that's what Razer does. They're just like, we're going to try to build the best 14-inch gaming laptop. We're going to try to build the best 17. And by best, I don't necessarily mean the most powerful. It's not always about all the specs. Like I said, why I like the Razer Blade 14 is, for me, it was balance. Like, I could still get pretty good battery life out of that thing. Enough so that I consider to use that as like a main laptop a lot of times. Like, that's kind of a neat thing. And the build quality is just really nice. Now, Razer is like any other company. Like, they don't have... I've seen a lot of complaints about their quality control, which I think is important. I mean, Dell has this too. HP has this as well. It's funny, no, whenever we post a story, like I can write something in the Dell, like XPS, whatever. And in comments, someone will be like, what are you guys getting paid by Dell? They suck. Their customer service is terrible. Their quality controls. It's all because of their own personal experience. Therefore, their own personal experience must translate to everybody else's personal experience, and they're right. And, that's all that matters. Then I will do a story on HP, and then I get people in comments like, HP is terrible. Their customer service is awful. Their quality control is bad. And I see the same thing with Razer. I see this with every single PC company. Even the Surface. Go to the Surface forums and the Reddit and stuff like that. And the quality control issues there too. Same thing. And going by that metric, literally there isn't a single PC I could tell you go buy that everybody would agree on is like their company stands by their product 100% and it's never flawed, or flawless. And like I said, I think it's important is that people don't have bad experiences. I think they totally do. It's just, it's a tough problem with this manufacturing. And this is actually one reason why Apple is regarded as so good. Like, they do not have that kind of problems, as far as I know. You don't see as much, faulty hardware with them. But that's a reason also why I think they charge so much for their products. And, good example of that is a Surface Studio. One thing I will give Microsoft really good credit for is with each hardware release, they do. They learn and get better. Surface Book was really rough coming out the gates, like really rough. And that's because they had so many moving parts going there. They had the new Windows Hello camera, which had never been done before, and like how that's going to work. And I remember we had the review unit, and the devices, and it was like, it was the day before it came out, they were like, we're releasing drivers, like that's how close this stuff was. And so you had the new Skylake chipsets, which were very problematic, and Microsoft got a little bit burned there by Intel. But each release, they've gotten better. The Surface Studio, besides decisions they made on hardware that I don't necessarily agree with, I've had no issues with it. It doesn't crash. Everything works. I haven't had a single problem with it outside of like a slow hard drive, but that's the reason why it costs $4,000, and why if you order one today, it's going to take weeks before you get it. I think they personally inspect each one. Like for instance, this display is 4,500 by 3,000. It's a lot of pixels. I don't think you're going to see a lot of complaints. I haven't seen a single one of someone going, "Oh, I have dead pixels on this thing." I think they're going through and checking every single one before it ships. That is not a mass production scenario, and that's why it costs $4,000. And this is what Apple does too. And I can guarantee you can go buy a lot of Apple MacBooks and buy 10 of them, and they'd all feel exactly the same. Each key will feel the same. Each trackpad will feel the same. Each display will be the same. I can almost, and sure that'll happen. PC manufacturers still have issues with this because they're still struggling with trying to keep costs low because there's way more competition for them. So they have to find that fine balance between keeping prices low and also increasing quality. And that's always going to be the problem there.
Yeah, no, I agree totally as well. I mean, part of another thing as well, when you're spending money that much money on a thing that you could probably spend way less on to do the same thing, it's more about the status of having said device. Like Apple users, they are, hey, I use an Apple Mac because I'm an Apple person, and you make that sort of fashion choice. Whereas obviously Surface is now one of them, I guess. And I would also consider Razer to be one. Razer are definitely pushing the boat out, and a lot of gamers at least say, I'm going to buy the Razer. I know this laptop here can do basically everything the Razer Blade can, but I'm Razer's the fashion choice that I choose. It's like that, and it makes sense. So I don't see why people are like, why? This is a rubbish thing. I can get the same thing for way cheaper. So what? So what?
Yep, yeah. So tough problem, but just remember before you comment your personal experience. I mean, I bought a Dell XPS 15 before, had it for a few days, and the speaker blew, right? So right. I understand this, and I would say though Dell support was very good. I sent it back, and they sent me a new one, or they fixed it and all this, and it's fine. These things happen, but I'm just hesitant to throw a company that completely under the bus just because you personally had a dud laptop, which is unfortunate. I mean, no one wants that, but I think people need to be a little bit careful here.
Real quick, let's quickly move on to our final topic, Surface Keyboard. Now, Dan's actually had the Surface Keyboard for a little while now. I think he did a review or at least an unboxing on it.
For the ergonomic one, yeah.
So have you not done one for the chiclet one then? The standard?
No. Yeah, it came with the Studio and I talked about it. I don't think for me there's not much to talk about.
It's not much. I mean, I got one today. It's very nice. They're out in the UK now if you're interested. The keyboard basically almost identical to the designer keyboard. If you haven't seen that, it's basically the silver one. I'll show it to the camera as well. But in black, that's the designer one. But this one here, the Surface one, very nice type of experience. A little bit more soft than the designer one, but I kind of like it. Bluetooth 4.0, metal, boot out metal, so it feels really nice. And generally just a really pleasant typing experience. It matches obviously the Surface dial and the Surface mouse, which again is just a designer mouse, but in grey or silver, whatever they call it, Surface colour. And yeah, a very nice premium keyboard and mouse set, except it's quite expensive. It's £90 in the UK, which I guess is $100 in the US. It's around the expensive mark for a keyboard. Battery life should last a while. I've only had it today, so I don't know how long it lasts. But I am very pleased with it. I'm glad I bought one. I've replaced my previous Microsoft wireless keyboard, which was the desktop 900, I think they called it, just a generic one. I am very pleased. It's got nice shortcuts up at the top, so you get access to your media buttons, volume, notification center. You can lock the device directly from the keyboard, which is interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of cool little shortcuts on it as well. I really like it. I definitely prefer this one over the split one that Dan has.
So I'm curious whether you've had issues with or can speak to the Bluetooth connectivity. I like Bluetooth. Obviously, it's very convenient. And as opposed to the dongle situation. So the reason why, if you look at the dongles that used to ship with wireless keyboards, including Microsoft's own, they didn't use Bluetooth. They used basically a Wi-Fi frequency, and it was very good. And I don't find Bluetooth as reliable. For instance, even on my studio here, occasionally I can feel the keyboard totally goes into like a sleep mode.
No, totally.
And sometimes I'll go start typing, and then like nothing happens, and then like a few seconds later, it's like it pops up on the screen and everything starts coming in. And it's just like I never experienced that before with the other wireless devices, but I see it now here, and it's a little bit frustrating. There's also the issue that Bluetooth is not, it's prone to interference, just like any other wireless spectrum. Some wireless spectrums perform better than others with interference. I found the wireless keyboard with the Wi-Fi type was more reliable than Bluetooth, where depending on how many devices are sitting in your room that are wireless, you can run into problems. So I don't know. Are you okay with the wireless stuff?
I definitely prefer the dongle keyboards. Like the previous keyboard I was using did use a dongle, and partly because it showed up in the BIOS. Like with the Bluetooth 4.0 keyboard here and other Bluetooth 4.0 keyboards, my PC doesn't see Bluetooth devices until it's booted into Windows. So if I'm trying to get to the BIOS, I can't get to it unless I plug in.
That is super annoying. I've had to like go bust out like old school USB laptops and just like plug it in just so I can hit like Enter F1 or something like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. But if you use a dongle, the PC says, okay, the PC just basically sees a plugged-in keyboard and it can pick it up immediately. And yeah, I've also seen that intermittent sort of issue where you start typing and it takes a second for it to start showing up. How I usually get by that, though, is I just press the Windows key and then I start typing, because then obviously once the Windows key comes up, Windows says, okay, so the keyboard's awake again and input works again. It doesn't drop out. If you're writing, I don't experience any dropouts. It's
right,
not
yeah,
that
no,
bad.
If it's actually being used, I don't have problems.
Right, it's just, I guess it tries to preserve battery life, or just the Bluetooth driver just kind of shuts off after a little while of not getting any, or not receiving anything. And then comes back on once it starts receiving things again. But that obviously takes a second to kick in.
Yeah, but I agree. I still use the ergonomic one. I love the feel of the keys, which is very similar, where they're kind of soft, but they bounce back. It's the bounce back that actually is what really counts, and just really good. I even prefer now, the new Surface ergonomic to the original ergonomic Sculpt, which is what I had been using for a long time. I actually got really used to this. I think they did a really great job. They are expensive, but just like pillows or a bed, you don't want to cheap out on these things if you use it a lot. Right. I use a keyboard, every day. It's one of my most important tools. I want the best one out there. I still, part of me wants a wired keyboard just because I find them a little bit more reliable. The mouse, I'm not huge on. It's Bluetooth though, so it just works right now, but I probably will get a different mouse that's a little bit more comfortable. I was actually happy with the Sculpt, but then I got to use a dongle for it, so I got to think about how I'm going to do this. These are definitely issues. And of course, I understand why they went with wireless here. It's a much cleaner looking system. If I start running wires here, it's going to get messy real quickly.
Yeah.
So there's always trade-offs.
Quickly, before we sign off, just want to quickly answer a few people's questions that I've seen pop up regarding CShells. One of them was, so does this mean the UI is going to change, and does it mean that it's going to be a noticeable thing? From what I've heard internally, I don't think Microsoft wants it to be a noticeable thing. It's definitely one of those, we're changing the code underneath, but we don't want the end user to really notice it. Because it's basically, at the end of the day, it's just a new behavior for the show, right? If you're using a desktop PC, you shouldn't notice the fact that desktop can now be mobile if it needs to be, because obviously you won't ever need that. So the desktop should still look like a desktop, still perform like a desktop, still have all the power tools you need and whatnot. Then obviously mobile devices, if they don't scale at all, will still just look like mobile all the time. It's not something that you're going to notice outside of the upcoming UI changes anyway, like Project Neon and whatnot. They're coming regardless of CShell and stuff. They may arrive at the same time, but I wouldn't say the shell stuff on its own is the reason why you're going to notice a bunch of UI changes and whatnot. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Sounds good. Well, we'll be back next week, and who knows what will happen. Actually, we know a couple things. I've been looking for my Blade Pro review early next week, as well as Zach's Cube stuff, and Jez, our gaming guru, will, of course, have some big scoops that are coming next week that we are well aware of that are pretty interesting. I guess I probably shouldn't. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about Minecraft and the mobile situation there, because that, quickly, this week came out that they're getting rid of the Windows Phone 8.1 version, which is the PE for phone. And that version was always behind and on a different development plan than what is the UWP app that's on Windows 10 right now, and Xbox and iOS. And so what does that actually mean for mobile? I'm just going to say not as bad as you think, folks. And we'll have a lot more stuff on Xbox, I think, coming next week, as well as Halo Wars 2, of course. We'll be ramping up coverage of that. I've got to play that recently, and that was a lot of fun. So make sure you tune in for that, as well as on Thursdays, we do our Microsoft Gaming and Libations, where me, Zach, and Jez sit around and play the latest video games on Beam, and you guys can join in with that as well. So thanks for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, R-U-B as in boy, I-N-O, and follow Zach at Zach Bowden, Z-A-C-B-O-W-D-E-N. And we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in live if you did, and we'll take a few questions now, which won't be part of the regular podcast, but you guys can see that on YouTube. Take care, everybody.